Imagina un Senado fracturado con un cierre de gobierno que paraliza el país, dejando a millones sin pagos federales, aeropuertos en caos y parques nacionales cerrados. Esta semana, audiencias explosivas revelaron escándalos que podrían redefinir la democracia estadounidense. Exposición letal a asbestos en la Casa Blanca, espionaje descarado entre senadores, defensas abiertas de extremistas del 6 de enero y ataques sistemáticos a derechos reproductivos y empleos verdes. Bienvenidos a este análisis profundo y sin filtros. Si busca la verdad detrás de las cortinas del poder, quédate hasta el final. Hoy desentrañamos el caos en el Capitolio con hechos verificados y consecuencias reales para el pueblo.
They're eating the dogs. Sleepy, crooked Joe Biden.
I really don't know what he said.
En una audiencia sobre programas de aprendices sindicales, el senador Ed Markey interrogó duramente a líderes sindicales y expertos sobre la demolición del ala este de la Casa Blanca. La administración de Donald Trump contrató trabajadores no sindicalizados a través de la ACCO, omitiendo protocolos estrictos de seguridad contra el asbestos, un carcinógeno mortal. Markey mostró videos y fotos. Vimos nubes de humo como exposiciones fatales de asbestos, similares a las que mataron a miles el 11 de septiembre. Un testigo sindical confirmó: "No estoy al tanto de protecciones adecuadas. En un sitio sindical habríamos detenido el trabajo inmediatamente por riesgos inminentes". Markey exigió respuestas al contratista. ¿Por qué arriesgar vidas para un salón de baile para donantes de Donald Trump?
A world-class apprenticeship program that includes training on asbestos abatement. Many old buildings were constructed and renovated when asbestos-laden products were industry standard, including the White House. Are you aware of any permits or other indications that the White House, that President Trump, took any of the appropriate safety steps when Trump demolished the East Wing of the White House to protect against asbestos exposure?
I'm not aware of anything that they would have done to protect.
So the White House could have exposed workers and passers-by to deadly asbestos. Is that your view?
They could have, and I can tell you, had it been a union workforce, we would have access to that. This administration chose to use a non-union workforce to go do that on a union project. One of the first things we teach in our apprenticeship is to have your brother or your sister's back. And if you see something, you say something. If something's unsafe, you can stop that work. This isn't a union job site, so we have no access to it. So I don't know what's going on out there.
No, thank you. And those safety standards, they exist for a reason. It's to protect workers. It's to protect innocent people who may be nearby, even working in the White House, from exposure to asbestos. And those standards just don't disappear on the whim of President Trump. They're there because of all the lessons we learned, especially because of asbestos workers who died at unbelievably high levels before we actually put protections in place. And that's why I wrote to the contractor who tore down the East Wing to demand answers on whether and why workers were put at risk for Trump's big donor ballroom. It's just another example of how Trump is the most anti-union president, anti-safety president in history. And that is something that absolutely we have to get to the bottom of. I've received no answers yet in terms of any asbestos protections, any other safety protections that were put in order to ensure that workers were not unnecessarily exposed to health-endangering situations. So I thank both of you for your work on these issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
For the record, every merit shop that I visited emphasizes and takes great pride upon their safety record. And they are subject to the same OSHA regulations as regarding maintaining safety and exposure to asbestos or anything else. So just for the record.
No, I agree with you. The question is, does the president think he can waive all regulations because it's the White House and not any other property in the United States? And if that was the case, then these workers were exposed.
Expertos estiman que sin remediación adecuada esto podría causar miles de muertes prematuras por mesotelioma y cáncer de pulmón en décadas venideras. Pues la prioridad, lujo para élites o salud pública. El silencio de la Casa Blanca habla volúmenes. En la Comisión de Comercio, el senador Bernie Moreno, recién electo, admitió abiertamente espiar autos de colegas demócratas en el garaje del Senado. Anotó números VIN visibles para exponer hipocresía en temas de seguridad vehicular y vehículos eléctricos. La senadora Jackie Rosen lo confrontó furiosa. ¿Estabas espiándome a mí y a mi equipo? Eso es una invasión de privacidad flagrante. ¿Qué planeas hacer con esos datos? Moreno replicó cínicamente: todo era visible desde fuera. No hackeé nada. Y Rosen contraatacó: dono mi cheque íntegro al tesoro. Tú causaste este cierre de gobierno yendo a Mar-a-Lago mientras la gente pasa hambre y pierde empleos. Moreno confesó haber recopilado datos de docenas de vehículos físicamente, escalando tensiones partidistas a niveles de paranoia. ¿Es esto el nuevo normal en un Senado dividido? Expertos en ciberseguridad advierten que abre la puerta a abusos mayores como rastreo o doxing.
Somebody who's been here 10 months, I think what we just saw was exactly classic Washington, D.C. In other words, the car that I drive should be safe. The car that my staff drives, who cares about them? I get a paycheck.
I object to you stalking my car and my staff to find the VIN numbers to present to this committee. What are you doing there? What are you going to do with them? It's an invasion of our privacy. If you came and asked me for my VIN, I will tell you what I have in my car.
It's visible from the outside of the car.
So you went and followed me.
Is this my time?
You went and followed me to see who drives me.
Can I reclaim my time?
And write down their VIN number. You interrupted me. You're attacking me. You watched me go to see who drives me, writing down their VIN number. Yep. So you could find out what they have. That seems a little creepy.
Just to expose the hypocrisy. Much like, for example,
expose the hypocrisy.
That you get paid. You get a paycheck, but you walk by. You get.
I'm donating my paycheck, sir, and would happily be on legislation.
What do you say to them? What do you say to the staff? What do you say to the TSA workers? What do you say to the air traffic controllers?
What I am saying to you is it's a Republican shutdown, my friend. You are in control of the White House. You are in control of the House, and you are in control of the Senate.
And if
you went home to a food bank instead of going to Mar-a-Lago to eat at a gold-plated dinner while people are starving, you might see and hear your constituents, sir. You are blind to the suffering of your people.
Does it take 60 votes?
You listening and coming to the table to have a discussion.
So it does take 60 votes.
You want to have this, come talk to me in private, sir.
Okay. So it does take 60 votes, for the record, just so that we're clear on the reporting, so that there's no misinformation. It does take 60. Back to you, Mr. Edwards. Question about air.
En la Comisión Judicial, el senador Dick Durbin brilló a un nominado de Donald Trump para un cargo federal. ¿Crees que las mujeres entienden menos los consejos médicos que los hombres? Citando escritos del nominado: no todos los pacientes comprenden plenamente la naturaleza del feto como ser humano. El nominado evadió: solo resumíamos evidencia científica. Y Durbin insistió: esto es un problema serio. Subestima la autonomía de las mujeres y amenaza Roe vs. Wade residual. Esto expone una agenda sistemática para erosionar derechos reproductivos, con nominados que ven el aborto como asesinato, independientemente de contexto médico. Mujeres en estados restrictivos ya enfrentan viajes de cientos de millas, más jueces sesgados significan más muertes maternas. Markey denunció con datos: Donald Trump ha cancelado 17 proyectos en Massachusetts solo, eliminando $8.600 millones en inversión y 17,000 empleos en apenas 9 meses. A nivel nacional, 158,000 puestos perdidos en eólica, solar y baterías. Los testigos sindicales dicen que el caos total, incertidumbre absoluta. No podemos reclutar ni graduar aprendices para un futuro verde. Los proyectos están estancados por derogaciones arbitrarias de la ley de reducción de la inflación que impulsaba transición energética. Familias enteras están en quiebra, comunidades rurales devastadas, regreso a combustibles fósiles sucios o inversión en empleos del siglo XXI. El senador Adam Schiff interrogó al nominado Wall para un puesto en agricultura. ¿Qué autoridad legal tiene para recolectar números de seguro social y direcciones de millones de beneficiarios de SNAP? Wall evadió, citando demandas pendientes. Y Schiff dijo: comprométete aquí y ahora a revisar por violaciones de privacidad, datos vendidos a empresas de inteligencia artificial o usados para deportaciones masivas como ICE, millones de pobres y niños en riesgo de exposición. Es una herramienta contra el fraude o un pretexto para control social.
Can you tell us what the legal authority is that USDA is relying on to collect, store, and share the personal data of tens of millions of Americans, including Social Security numbers, home addresses, simply because they received or applied for SNAP benefits?
Senator, I appreciate that question. My understanding is there were 4 requests for state data, for state recipient data. One of the requests was made in May, and so I was at FNCS. But as I recall, I had no involvement in drafting or issuing that particular request. But I was aware of what was going on. And I would say I know that there is a lawsuit brought by numerous attorneys generals, and I hesitate to give my opinion in terms of what that authority might be, because that may be an issue in the case.
Mr. Walk, if confirmed, are you committed to reviewing this policy independently, objectively, to ensure that it does not violate federal privacy laws, which protect Americans' personal data and identities?
Sir, I appreciate that question, and I will say that I think the collection of data itself is something that we need to look at in general. As a 24-year federal employee, I certainly understand the privacy implications, and that we have laws that protect data throughout the information life cycle, from collection to transmission, to storage, to disposal. And I will, and I want to make sure that as we use the data technologies, which carries promise, that we also make sure that we deploy them in a way that abides by.
En audiencia sobre violencia política, testigos republicanos defendieron perdones masivos para más de 1,200 convictos del 6 de enero. El senador Peter Welch dijo: son apropiados perdones incluso para atacantes de policías. Todos levantaron la mano afirmativamente, incluyendo a quienes casi matan al oficial Daniel Erges. Erges testificó con voz quebrada: fui golpeado repetidamente, mi cráneo aplastado con mi propia porra, sangré profusamente. Denunció sesgo. Extremismo de derecha ha causado 520 muertes desde 1990 versus solo 78 de la izquierda. Según datos del FBI, mostró el casco destrozado del oficial Brian Sitnick, muerto tras el asalto. Y la solución propuesta: fortalecer la democracia sin trabas, facilitar el voto fácil, detener el gerrymandering partidista y financiar seguridad electoral. Perdón, ¿equivale a invitación a más insurrecciones? Comparte este video si no lo viste en noticias corporativas que lo ignoran.
I'm speaking in my personal capacity. However, I draw upon my experiences as one of the few police officers in this country who has policed both the protests and riots of 2020, as well as the insurrection of January 6, 2021. I am intimately familiar with political violence, as when I fought to defend the United States Capitol and many of your very lives, I was beaten, bloodied, crushed, with my eye gouged and my skull smashed with my own baton. Political violence is a worthy topic for discussion. However, the press release I saw from the subcommittee chair made it clear that this was not going to be an honest consideration of various causes and effects, but rather a ham-fisted attempt to propagate the unsupported notion that liberal ideology is the greatest origin of modern political violence. This is particularly galling to me, since every single member of the majority on the subcommittee has either contributed to one of the most infamous examples of conservative political violence of our age, or the protection of its perpetrators. Every majority member who could do so voted to acquit Donald Trump during his second impeachment, and now we find ourselves in a new horrific age of political violence, one where it is carried out by the state itself. A permanent resident was arrested without a warrant and is being threatened with deportation simply for his politics. A Tennessee man was arrested and is being held on $2 million bail for sharing a Trump meme on social media. Members of Congress have been denied access to ICE facilities despite the law granting them unannounced oversight rights. These detentions and prohibitions are all grounded in the threat of deadly force and violence, are absurd or outright illegal, and politically motivated by right-wing ideology. The fact that these actions are carried out by agents of the state doesn't make them acceptable, it makes them far worse. The current administration is doing whatever it can to downplay the threat that right-wing violence presents to the United States, including literally erasing data. Between September 12th and the 13th of this year, the Department of Justice deleted their own study from their website, which came to the conclusion that right-wing extremism poses a much greater threat than left-wing extremism. I quote now the opening paragraph of this National Institute of Justice report published just last year. Quote, "Militant, nationalistic, white supremacist, violent extremism has increased in the United States. In fact, the number of far-right attacks continues to outpace all other types of terrorism and domestic violence extremism. Since 1990, far-right extremists have committed far more ideologically motivated homicides than far-left or radical Islamist extremists, including 227 events that took more than 520 lives. In this same period, far-left extremists committed 42 ideologically motivated attacks that took 78 lives. A recent threat assessment by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security concluded that domestic violent extremists are an acute threat and highlighted a probability that COVID-19 pandemic-related stressors, long-standing ideological grievances related to immigration, and narratives surrounding electoral fraud will continue to serve as a justification for violent actions. There will always be those who seek to further their own political agenda through extra-legal violence, and that is what law enforcement is for. But to reduce the risk of the population at large from falling into radicalization, the solution is simple. It's unfettered democracy. One of democracy's greatest assets is how, when unsullied, it provides a mechanism for everyone to have their voice heard. And when people believe their government speaks for them in some manner, then they're less apt to seek violent means to accomplish their political agendas. So make voting easier, not harder. Stop gerrymandering people into oblivion. Stand on the strength of your ideals, not the depth of your donors' pockets. Stop shopping for judges and start seeking ideas that withstand scrutiny from any political ideology. When you tell the people that an election was stolen from them, they will take up arms against their neighbors without a shred of evidence, I know. But if you tell them brilliant political rhetoric is their birthright and civic engagement is their privilege, they'll instead take up the book and the pen, and we'll all be richer for it. And when you... Just so you know that this is the helmet that U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick wore on January 6, 2021. And he died the following day. The family member just got back that today.
Incluso el senador Mike Rounds admitió en la audiencia: perdemos en temas económicos, hagamos funcionar el gobierno básico. La gente quiere trenes, aviones y servicios en horario, no caos.
Are losing money in the economy. That's not good for anybody. Let's focus on that. Let's get our jobs done. I think people want to see the trains run on time. They want to see the airplanes run on time.
Right.
And that's something that we want to get back to.
La analista Claire McCaskill dijo que los votantes repudieron al Departamento de Justicia persiguiendo enemigos políticos. El Senado está en juego en el 2026 en las midterms en estados como Texas, Maine y Carolina del Norte. Pueden cambiar todo con movilización. Estas audiencias no son anécdotas, revelan negligencia mortal, espionaje interno, erosión de derechos fundamentales y destrucción masiva de empleos bajo el mando de Donald Trump. Es un llamado urgente a la vigilancia ciudadana. ¿Cómo impactarán estas revelaciones en las midterms del 2026? Veremos un Congreso que prioriza al pueblo sobre donantes y extremistas. Comenta abajo tu opinión, suscríbete, dale like y comparte para amplificar la verdad y presionar por cambio. Gracias por ver, juntos defendemos la democracia. Tengan muy buenas tardes, esto fue Pulso Político y chao chao.